James Willis here, Chris O'Keefe back next Monday. Now, it's no real secret that New South Wales and Sydney in particular are in the middle of a housing crisis. The word crisis gets thrown around a lot, but in housing we've got a serious problem. Mile behind on new builds. We've got builders going broke, which is an issue that a lot of people seem to overlook. The rental market is a mess. Young people being locked out of buying their first homes. There's a huge wait for social housing. And sadly, a lot of people are homeless or sleeping in tents or still in temporary accommodation from natural disasters. And as the government acknowledges, this problem will only explode with the arrival of hundreds of thousands of new migrants in New South Wales over the next 5 years. Labor's announced their plan in their first budget to tackle this problem. The Minister for Housing is Rose Jackson, and she's on the line for us this afternoon. Minister, many thanks for your time.
Hey, James, how are you?
You've got a massive task, but you knew this in opposition, and I spoke to you in opposition when you were talking about your plan to fix this. Can I ask you firstly on what Victoria has announced today, and that is a tax on the owners of short-term accommodation, Airbnbs, to basically force them to put their properties back on the market. Is this something New South Wales is looking at?
Yeah, I mean, all options are on the table. So I saw that announcement from the Victorian government today. You know, a lot of different policies there in their housing plan that they've put out, a lot of good ideas. You are absolutely right. I mean, the scale of the crisis is massive, and we've been clear we are open to ideas. So, we're going to be discussing with the Victorian government what they have in mind. They've mentioned 7.5%. Love to see work that they've done to inform that figure. But absolutely all options are on the table here.
Okay, it's a live option. And the other thing that I read recently is that there's a rule in place already in New South Wales where if you're making money off short terms for more than 180 days, I think, you're meant to be against the rules and, you could be in trouble. But so far, and it's not your department, but so far no one's actually been penalised for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are, as you say, some regulations in place to try and, limit the impact of the short-term rental market on the overall housing market. But compliance is a massive problem. It's a huge issue. So, we know that compliance with the existing rules is something we need to look at, but also updating those rules, new rules, better rules, to try and ensure that the core goal of the government, which is people in this state having a stable and affordable place to live, is being delivered by our policy settings.
Can you just clear something up for us once and for all? Because I hear politicians talk about social housing and affordable housing. What are the definitions of social housing and affordable housing?
So social housing is what you get when you're basically on a government income. Really, the eligibility these days, it's what used to be called public housing. It is for really the most vulnerable. The people who are, on the pension, on a disability support pension, on government income support, and they pay a percentage of their income to the government, who is their landlord. Affordable housing's a bit different. You pay a discount on market rent, and it's really for working people. Most people in affordable housing have got jobs, but it's often those low-income jobs, those people that we don't pay enough, childcare or aged care, who struggle in the private rental market. And we need them living in our cities. We need them, working in our childcare centres, working in our aged care centres. And so they pay a discounted market rent, in order to live somewhere near where they need to work. So there is a difference between them. And I know the terms are used interchangeably, but I hope that gives people some clarity about the different cohorts. They're both important, and they're both part of the solution.
Sure. And ultimately what we need is more supply, and that's for people to buy and for social and affordable, but also for market houses so people can crack into the market. From this budget announcement and having a look through the budget documents that were handed down yesterday, I can only see a state-based commitment to build fewer than 5,000 homes through the agency Landcom in the next 17 years, which means an average of 276 new homes, both affordable and market, between now and 2040. Is that enough?
No, it's absolutely not enough. But the reality is most of the market-based homes are delivered by the private market. I mean, Landcom has a role to play, and we're trying to beef up its role, but most of the construction that we need is construction activity in the private market. And that is why the money that we have put on infrastructure is so important. Because here's the problem. If you're a private builder or a private developer and you're trying to deliver homes, as you say, for people to buy or people to rent in the private market, If you can't connect it to the sewer, they can't flush the toilet. If there's no road, they can't get to the home. And so that's the state's role. We are trying to lift our contribution to that infrastructure so that private market supply can really increase. Now, we put that money in the budget. We've also done more in terms of our own direct delivery through Landcom. But I would never pretend, and the government isn't pretending, that in and of itself is the solution. It's just one layer of the work that we're doing.
So just on that, just explain this to me. How does this work out financially? If you're saying here $300 million for 1,409 affordable homes, 3,288 market homes, so that's 4,700 homes in total between now and 2039. From $300 million, unless my maths is wrong, that's $65,000 per home. How does that work?
Well, because Landcom is able to access, for example, government-owned land, and that's a critical difference. I mean, the big cost in terms of what it costs to deliver housing is land. So we're doing a land audit and bringing government land online. Landcom's able to access that, so that is why it's able to deliver that housing at that cheaper rate. And as I said, that's part of the answer here, getting Landcom in, doing more on government land. That $300 million, James, that's additional to the money that Landcom is spending year in, year out on housing. So that's additional money in the budget. But as I said, that's just the Landcom piece. There is a whole other piece on social housing. Landcom doesn't do social housing. And there is a whole other piece on private market housing. And that's where our infrastructure delivery is so important, so that we can actually build homes where people can turn the tap on and have a park to play in.
Yeah, so you've acknowledged that the private builders have got to do some heavy lifting here. You've just made it harder for every builder in town to build apartments and build homes because there's a new tax, and you'll say it's an infrastructure contribution, but it's a tax on all new builds of at least $10,000 per strata unit and at least $12,000 for a house. Isn't that going to scare builders off, or is it going to increase the price that people have to pay when they're trying to slug out for their first home?
Absolutely not. And in fact, that's a great question, which is why we got the Productivity Commission to look at exactly that question. And the Productivity Commission found that there was no impact on affordability. So we've answered that element of it. But look, as I said, go back to the fundamentals here. There's no point having land that is rezoned for housing if there is no infrastructure, if it's not connected to a road, if there's no footpath, if you can't flush the toilet, if there's no school. People are sick of that in Sydney. People in Sydney have experienced housing delivered without infrastructure, and they're sick of it. And so we do know we have to deliver the infrastructure, and the government has a role to play. We're putting billions of dollars into that. But developers have a role to play too, and we're working really collaboratively with them to try and find that balance. But I don't make any apology for saying, yes, we're for housing, and it's well-located housing that's supported by infrastructure.
Yeah, I understand that. But if I want to build 20 new units, that's $10,000 per unit. So that's $200,000 onto the cost of the project, and you're satisfied that won't impact developers or be passed on to people that are buying those homes?
Yeah, as I said, we looked at the structure of the infrastructure contributions regime. We put it to the Productivity Commission. We said, what is the impact of this going to be? And they came back with a really clear answer that it isn't going to impact affordability. Having said that, that proposition is also before IPART right now, which is an independent regulator, and they're looking at it too. We're taking these issues that you've raised really seriously. We're asking the Productivity Commission to look at them. We're getting IPART to approve them. But at the end of the day, the infrastructure is essential. You can't deliver homes without infrastructure, and the government's playing its part in contributing to that. And everyone has to lift. If we're going to talk about a crisis, as you say, an overused word, everyone has to lift and do their bit in trying to resolve that.
Yeah, I just think it's a little bit uninspiring, Rose. And I spoke to you when you were in opposition regards to how you're going to fix this problem. Now, are you convinced that there is enough Crown land available? Because, previous studies have indicated that it's not all that easy to access. And we've got to remember as well, any unused Crown land, am I right in saying, could be subject to an Aboriginal land rights claim?
I'm absolutely not putting all my eggs in the Crown land basket. This is way more than Crown land, James. Every single agency, transport, health, TAFE, education, all of the SOCs, all of the state-owned corporations, every part of government is being asked to identify their surplus and underutilised land. I would agree with you. If I was telling you the answer here is Crown land, you would be right to say that's not enough. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying all government land, every agency is part of the mix here. And the other thing I would acknowledge is there's more to come from the New South Wales government on this. We are going to have more to say. We are not pretending the announcements that we've made so far are going to deliver the outcomes we want to achieve, but we're doing this methodically, clearly, in an evidence-based way, and there will be more to come.
We appreciate your time.
No worries, mate.
Rose Jackson, the New South Wales Housing Minister, also the Minister for Water, confirming at the start of that, by the way, that the New South Wales government is keeping their options open in regards to what Victoria has announced today about a tax on the owners of short-term accommodation like Airbnb, which in Victoria is 7.5%. And the whole idea of that is to force those people to say, well, I'm not making that much money on it, so I'm going to put that home for sale or put it back on the rental market so it's freed up. If you're an Airbnb owner, I'd like your views on that, 131873. And also, look, and when you dig into the weeds, and this is really when we start to acknowledge that governments spend a lot of money for not much result. Now, they said yesterday $2.2 billion for new homes. Now, the federal government has chipped in a ton of money through Albo's $10 billion future fund, housing fund. So they're getting 1,500 social homes that way. Then there's 4,700 homes between now and 2039, which is about 200 homes a year between now and then, $300 million for that. Then there's $70 million for interest-free debt financing for New South Wales Land and Housing Corporation, 100 build-to-rent homes on the South Coast at the cost of $60 million. But just on the cost, and $300 million for 4,600 homes, the minister just said then, well, if we own the land, then that's the largest bit of the money. But doesn't seem to be enough. Unless I'm missing something, it's not a lot of homes every year, and it's about $65,000 per promised home. What do you make of it? Give me a call, 131873. Call us online. Stay there. I'll be with you right after.